Well, preparations for the state funeral of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe are currently underway. His body is expected back in the country tomorrow, and he will be buried on Sunday. Mugabe passed away at the age of 95 at a Singapore hospital. And ENC's Samkele Maseko joins us now with the latest. Samkele, welcome. I mean, what's been the latest since you've arrived in Zimbabwe?
Well, Tumelo, there is confusion on where the former statesman will be buried, whether he's going to Zembe, his home village, or he will be buried at Heroes Acre, where all liberation icons of Zimbabwe are buried. But we're with Mr. Ibo Mandaza, one of the first public servants to work with the former statesman from Mozambique going into independence in the 1980s here in Zimbabwe. He's also penned down an opinion piece basically saying goodbye to Mr. Mugabe. Mr. Mandaza,
yes.
How do you feel since Mr. Mugabe's passing?
Well, it's a historical phase. He was a very ripe age, 95. Under normal circumstances, people would be celebrating, like they did with Mandela. In his case, you can see that things are very muted, and they're very muted. A lot of confusion as to where the man should be buried. It's hardly the kind of stuff one expected of a statesman, you know.
When you look at his legacy, what would be one of the highlights of him, and looking at what's happened to Zimbabwe since independence in 1980 to today? You've worked with him before. Was he a villain or a liberator?
Yeah, he was. He was a nationalist, along with contemporaries like Joshua Nkomo and Nabunigi Stole, both of whom were his seniors. And of course, I put in the category of founding nationalists in the post-independent of the independence struggle in Zimbabwe and in Africa.
When you look at contemporary issues that have been debated about him, you go to the issues to the ethnic violence that took place in the Matabele land. You look at the land grabs in the early 2000s with the restoration program of land expropriation. What would be Mugabe's legacy here in Zimbabwe, with his pros and cons?
You see, I'm a historian. I don't believe history is made by individuals. The individuals are always part of a process, part of history, part of a team. So in both the good and the bad, Mugabe was part of a team. And regrettably, part of the team are still there. They're the guys who ousted him and now in charge. And you cannot hold Mugabe solely responsible for Bukura Hundi, which you referred to, without looking at the people who are officially said to have been responsible, i.e. Mr. Mnangagwa himself in particular.
When you look at what's currently happened to this country, and you look at the team that he worked with within ZANU-PF, when you identify them and you look at the collapse of Zimbabwe, what role could they have played to turn around the situation, and where did Zimbabwe go wrong, since you are one of the first public senior servants to work in...
As you said, in the good times, which is the early years of independence, there was a kind of a team which was not chosen by Mugabe. It was self-evident, it was there to impose itself in the post-independence period. You had a team of old nationalists, including Mugabe himself, Nagumbo, Tekere, Sinkala, Zenda, and these worked very closely with a bunch of technocrats, including people like myself, Christo Shokunze, Mushaya Karara, and so many others. The team worked very well in the 80s as a team, nationalists and technocrats. And we believe we achieved a lot, which is now legendary in education, in health, and indeed now, as you know, in human resource development, South Africa is the main beneficiary of that period. We have many of our skills there. We have 70% of Zimbabwean skills professionals outside the country. 70%. So those are achievements which also became our... Where things went wrong, I think things went wrong when Mugabe became executive president. And I think that if we were to begin reforming Africa, the African state, we should abolish this office of executive presidents. It's a lot of baggage there. And then, of course, Mugabe surrounded himself. He got rid of most of the team I referred to. By the end of the 80s, most of that team, whether they were politicians or civil servants, were thrown out. And I like to believe those in charge today were part of those machinations. And increasingly, Mugabe was surrounded by incompetent people, as evidence shows. Now today, it's impossible to imagine the country being turned around by the bunch of people who are there. It's impossible, neither politically nor economically.
How would you describe the legacy of Robert Mugabe? Our last question to you. Really running out of time.
I think it must be remembered in a holistic fashion. A man who did good and ended up a villain, regrettably.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibo Mandaza. That was Mr. Ibo Mandaza, one of the first senior public servants to work with the independent government of Zimbabwe, moving from Mozambique to the country, which in the 1980s, basically saying he was a liberator turned villain.
All right, that was ENC's Samkele Maseko. Thank you.